So the human in a warehouse is a gripper. That's all you are. So if we can automate everything around you to eliminate your walking, to eliminate your thinking process really, anything else, if you can be stationary and just grip stuff and go put it from A to B, then that's the best use of a human right now in a warehouse. Automation always happens on the ground floor or is built from the ground floor up. Automation needs to happen also from the ceiling down, because a lot of empty space in a warehouse is where your maximum height of storage, pallets, whatever you have, that is lower than your ceiling. And that's a lot of real estate that is not used. There's a lot of very cool automation to come, in my opinion, in the sense of utilizing space that is currently wasted. And that is a game changer, because current warehouse operators, hopefully everybody outgrows the warehouse, right? It means their business is growing. But that also means that instead of outgrowing your warehouse, you just need to think differently. You need to add new automation. You need to add new robotics. You need to add smarter systems to utilize the currently empty space.
Hello everyone, I'm Alvin, the host of Constructive Chaos Podcast. Today we'll be interviewing Karl Friesenbichler. Karl is a leader in logistic industry. Now I'm sure all of you have experienced shopping. Whether you go shop online or in store, you must have wondered, how does this item get from factory into my hand? Karl is one of those great people behind the scene who deal with all of those complexities. Currently, Karl is the CEO of Ferag, a tech company that provides solutions for warehouse, as well as a company that acquires Dereoida, a warehouse management software that was founded by Karl a few years ago. Besides that, Karl has also lived in many different countries, which influence his unique perspective in life. There are a lot of things to learn from him, so I hope you can learn something and find it enjoyable. Can you maybe start from introducing yourself first? What is your background and what do you work?
Sure. Well, hello. I'm Karl Friesenbichler. I have a very interesting long German last name that nobody in the English-speaking world would try to usually pronounce. So that's absolutely fine to call me Karl. Yeah. I've been in the intralogistics industry for the last 25 years, roundabout, so a quarter of a century. And I've been running my own business for a couple of years now. And everything that happens in a warehouse that has to do with software and with automation, like robotics or conveyors, is usually my gig. And we'll work closely with that here in Australia with a lot of large customers, and now in Europe as well.
Okay, so we'll talk about all of your startups and the company that you're currently working on. But before I get into that, I think I want to dig in more into your personal life first. I want to get to know you better. So
sure.
What is your upbringing like? Because I think I remember reading that you're originated from Austria. Is that correct? And then you moved into Australia. And what is that like?
That's the really short story of it. I was born in Austria in the 1980, and I left Austria in 1997, and I lived in the United Kingdom in Manchester. And Manchester in the 90s, if people have been, was quite a lot of fun. Maybe not the most legal fun, but a lot of fun. And that's the first time I was exposed to software, exposed to processes in a warehouse. So I did an internship at a company called James Hall in Preston, close to Manchester, and never left really, and always was offered jobs in the industry or close by. So I went back to Austria for a military service, and then fell into this industry and lived all over the world really. I mean, I've lived in the Middle East for a long time. I lived in Thailand for a long time, in Southeast Asia, and then over that now finally ended up in Australia about 8-9 years ago.
All right, so you've moved into a lot of different places. Do you think that affects you, how you think compared to people who are?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always tell people, go abroad, go further. Don't stay in your country where you're born. because it will widen your whole thinking of not thinking the traditional way that whatever is it where you're from. There's a very traditional way of how people think and perceive reality. But if you become the foreigner, if you become the outsider, it really forces you to reset your value system as well, and to be way more open and accepting, and accepting other cultures, traditions, whatever it is. So I always recommend people go as far away as possible. Go into a country with a different language. Don't know the language, just go there and be there for at least a year to get to know the country and work there. I think living there, you have to work there to really absorb the soul of a country, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think like exposing yourself to a lot of different experience probably really is like a key thing to creativity, right? Because you're sort of like marrying different things there. And I guess another thing that I want to know about before getting into your startups is like recently I was looking through your LinkedIn and I saw that you have experience in designing airport logistics. And I feel like that's like one of the things that like a lot of people have used, like they have experienced at least like the start and the end, you know, they put on their baggage and then like, oh, it arrives on the other side of the world.
It magically appears somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like,
but I mean, isn't it the same as in it's supply chain, right? You check in a bag and you expect it to arrive halfway around the world, but you order something from Amazon and you expect it to arrive the next day or same day. And nobody knows what the magic is behind it. So for me, it was just an adjacent industry, really, to say, if something happens in a warehouse or in an airport, it's in principle, it's the same. I need to transport something from A to B. I need to store something, early bags, for example, and I need to make sure I fulfill the customer promise. And the promise is that you get your property. And that is the same for you ordering something online or you checking in a bag. It's your property. You paid for it. So in quintessentially, it's the same problem that you try to solve. Slightly different, but yeah, the airports industry is really fun. I have to say it's a lot less complex than a warehouse because you have a lot of bags that go through and need to go to different flights. In a warehouse, you have millions of different products that need to be stored in the right location, maybe handled differently depending on their value or their attributes, if they're dangerous or not. And then you have a lot of tiny orders of people ordering 1 or 2 pieces, and you need to fulfill all of that and collect it properly. So it's very different in a sense of the detail of it, but as an overall concept, that's the same thing. And yeah, if anybody wants to go into baggage handling, designing of baggage handling systems, it's a lot of fun as well.
I see.
That's to me, it's always the same. It's like, you know, maybe you're too young, but when I was a kid, I had this Carrera racetrack where you have where you race those little cars on a racetrack. And to me, it's designing warehouse automation or designing an airport baggage handling system is the same thing. You're laying tracks for a racetrack, and then you're racing bags. That's all you do in the end. So it's immensely funny or fun to do because it's your inner child being really happy that you're still playing with stuff.
Yeah, I love how you describe like such a serious business, which is like child toys. And I guess like I want to get into your startups now. So you founded, correct me if I'm wrong in pronouncing it. Is it Dereoida? How do I?
Yeah, that's
Dereoida.
That's really well done. Really well done.
Okay. Yeah. So like, does it mean something in like?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So Dereoida, I'm Austrian, and it is very Austrian, both words. So Germans might not understand or Swiss might not understand, let alone the rest of the world who doesn't speak German. And to me, it's 2 words that are incredibly funny, but also have a really, really, really nice meaning. So the first one is Dere, which is a greeting that you can use to greet somebody you know, you trust, so friends, family. You could say Dere as a greeting instead of hello. You could say Dere. which is something very nice, something very warm. And then Oida, in Austria, Oida is used as an expression of anything and anything. So there are a couple of YouTube videos out there. Watch them. It's really fun to watch. And for me, Oida was always positive and an expression of excitement. But it is one of those words in everybody's language. You have those words that are always funny, no matter what. And Oida is one of those words that just makes you smile. And to me, to combine those two words, that I greet you as somebody I trust and somebody I value, but also I'm very excited about it. The values were really nice, and that's about 10% of why I chose the name was the values of the words. 90% was because it made me laugh, and everybody told me don't do it. It doesn't work in English speaking language. Nobody understands. And I was like, nah, I don't care. It's my business. I can do whatever I want with the name. And I chose that name because it makes me happy. Every day in the morning when I looked at my email address, I smiled. When I look at any sort of, wherever the brand is on, it always made me smile. And I think that's so important to everybody who thinks about starting a business. At least, first of all, do something that you love, because otherwise you'll fail. But secondly, if you pick a name, don't go marketing on it, because everybody does that. Everybody tries to, Super Micah Habernet, whatever. Pick a name that makes you happy, that makes you smile, because you're going to see this name for a long time, ideally. So just pick something that you can smile about, and that makes you happy, and that evokes a positive emotion with you. And then it will convey anyway, because every time I tell this story to a client or any contact, really, most of the time they will be like, oh, that's a really good story of the name. I was like, yeah. And it still makes me smile, and it still makes me happy. And and people can't pronounce it, so they memorize it.
Yes, I feel like most of the brands, I don't really know what they mean anyway. So at least if you want to choose a name that doesn't really have any meaning in most people's brain, at least it has meaning to you. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And as said, I mean, Apple, before Apple was there, it was a fruit, nothing else. It's like Google was nothing, right? And those are the big brands. So just I think it's people are overthinking how a brand name evokes something before, unless the brand name is incredibly known, like Coca-Cola or all the others. Obviously, there is an emotion attached to it, but that emotion happened afterwards. It didn't happen by design upfront, right? So that's my thinking on branding. It's like,
I think
pick something that you are happy with. Yeah.
Okay. And aside from that, I want to get into the journey of you building the company. So I feel like most of the times, or I guess all of the times, a company is a solution to an existing problem in the world. So you have to figure out what the problem is first. And in this case, what do you think is the problem that you're trying to solve?
That's so true. If you don't know which problem you're solving, then you will fail. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of value in failing, because it's the best learning effects come out of failures, not out of something going well. For me, it all started. I mean, this is the second time around running my own business. With Dereoida, it literally started as an experiment. So I saw a problem, and the problem was that software in a warehouse can either manage the manual part of a warehouse, people, locations, and stock really well, but it's really crap at automation. So anything robotics, conveyors, any intralogistics automation, really. Or the other way around, it can be a great control system for automation of one supplier, and then it needs another software package on top of it to manage the other stuff. And that's inevitably terrible. If you have one operational show, one operational system, one operational warehouse that is split into different layers of when is the software doing what, which software is doing what, you always end up with a half-baked solution, because nobody has the end-to-end responsibility of a process. And if you're not responsible, you don't care. So I've seen that in the last 2 decades. And my idea was, how about building something that we can use for everything and that is completely agnostic to hardware, which also means that you can pick and choose different suppliers in one warehouse and then just get it managed by all of that. And that was the idea. So that the problem was very clear. The problem was that there's no unity in systems, in software, in a warehouse. And the solution was a hobby. It started off as, let's not think about making money. Let's not think about anything else but solving that problem. And if it's never going to fly, then we have solved the problem, but the market didn't care about it. Fair enough. It was a hobby. So it was done at night, overnight, most of the time, after work, and never with the aim of making it a multi-million-dollar business or anything. And that's what I would give everybody that comes to me and asks about startups. And if they should run their own startup, I tell them, don't make it for the money. If you're in the game for the money, become a corporate executive, because that's where you can earn easy money, in my opinion. But if you want to have your ideas fulfilled, if you want to design this, and if this is your absolute passion, then create a startup for it and create the product, create your idea. And with software, it's so nice with software because whatever we think, we can code down and realize and make work. So it's literally, you have this blank sheet of paper and an idea, and then you start coding, and your thoughts, your ideas become reality in a software application. And that's really tempting. But yeah,
Right.
And then it started off, I think it was, so it started off the first year, and I coded it myself, and I did not accept any money from anyone. Nor was there any interest from anybody. So it's just the hobby at night. And after the first year, it was literally the assessment of version 1. It was sort of ready to test the waters, and it was good, but it wasn't great, and it wasn't as flexible, and it wasn't as architecture wasn't as fun as I wanted it to be. So I just deleted the whole thing and did another year of recoding, or just coding again, version 2. And version 2 was really cool. So after 2 years of fiddling around, that was a version, and I had the first staff, obviously, at that time. And that was a version where I would feel comfortable doing a smaller project, a smaller warehouse, and got the first warehouse here in Australia. And we obviously did not know if this thing was going to work or not. It was an idea, and it was tested theoretically, but it was never seen in action. So we deployed it to a customer here in Sydney, and we had 1 or 2 hiccups, obviously. And then I think after a week or 2 of testing, we went live, and they ever since, a couple of years ago now, ever since, they are running their show, and it's no problem, or very, very few problems. We hardly ever hear from them. And that was the point where that was the first time where I actually thought, I need to monetize this properly. And we need to now generate value propositions around the product, and then do all the boring stuff that business managers need to do. But up until then, it was pure fun of let's just try.
Yeah.
Everything and nothing can go wrong. So that was the approach.
Right. Yeah. So like in the first 2 years, like you work alone. You didn't have like anyone else helping you in the project, was it?
In the first year, I had a lot of people helping me, like with ideas or sessions on how would you do this. There was a lot in the circle of people that I know in my industry. I did ask questions, and I interviewed people. And then after a year, after the first year, when I started version 2, I onboarded the first staff member, and it was pretty much financed from. In the meantime, in the second year, I did consulting work to help to get some money in, really. And with that money, I paid my living expenses and my employee, and then got a second one in. And I think we were 3 of us in the company when the first project landed, and then within a year we were, I think, 10, and now we're 70. So now it's a totally different game. So now the fun phase of a startup is gone. Now it's how to build this corporate globally, and it's a different challenge, right? So Now it's from going from this small, very flexible startup operation where you need to do everything to you not being the developer anymore. You are the CEO. You are the one making decisions or making the calls, but don't go down to details because you don't have time for that. So it's different again. And I think a lot of times people also need to realize that if you are great at developing or if you're great at R&D, whatever you are, don't feel obliged to then become a team lead or a manager, because I've seen it many times that people become unhappy when they go into management because they lost what they really liked doing, which was down in the nitty-gritty and working on the product, to working with the kindergarten, working with staff. And that's completely different. So I'm very aware of the switch, and for me it's worth it because I love building businesses as well. But if somebody likes the engineering part of it, then stick to it. If it makes you happy, you'll be rewarded for it.
Do you regret, this might be like a stupid question, but does that mean you regret scaling up your business into like a bigger business where you're forced into like a higher position? Whereas like before you can sort of be like a developer, like building your own like little things.
No, not at all. I think it is hugely rewarding to me to grow the business on a global scale. But I think I would not have been able to do this if I wouldn't have gone through a corporate career before the startup, where I've done this for another business, to build something and to grow and learn a lot about how does global large corporates, how do they work, and which spoken and unspoken rules are there that you need to sort of play with, and all the corporate politics, which is fine. I think doing this, if I would have been 20 and founded this, I've been out by now because it would have been way over my head. Now I'm very comfortable because I can relax and settle in and build. But I think again, this is depending on everybody's flavor, I think.
Okay. And did Dereoida had any investors back then? Did you have?
No, zero.
Zero. Okay.
No. We had no investors at all, which was quite interesting. It was self-funded. There was nothing.
Did you try to pitch into like investors and they just rejected, or did you have this like principle to not have?
Not really. So I did a startup accelerator program here in Sydney, and during that accelerator program, we landed one of the biggest retailers of Australia as a customer. So, and that was an accelerator to teach you how to pitch to investors. And by the time it came to the pitch rounds, all I had to say was, my customer is Maya, which is huge for their supply chain. And investors would say, now I want to invest. It was like, now it's too late, because now I have a customer giving me a decent amount of money, and we have good license income, and we don't need to. If I don't need an investor, if I can organically grow, then that's a lot more freeing because I do not have that pressure on. And I think also a lot of investors told me, because this is business to business and it's organic growth, that they don't care too much about it because they want to see 1,000% growth a year. And I said, it's not achievable on the long run. I can do this for 1 year, but I can't do this for 50 years. So that most investors who go to startup pitches, they want to find that one unicorn that makes them a ton of money in 6 months and then crash and burn, which my business was never like that. It was always centered around, let's grow, but in a very controlled way that we always deliver the best possible quality. And I don't think that would have worked with venture capital at all.
I see. And
nothing against that. Yeah. I mean, but also if you have like a B2C product that you can scale up, then you can achieve that, right? I mean, any app for people would be an example of that.
Okay. And your startup ends up getting acquired by Ferag. which is the company that you're currently leading. So, what
Yeah.
is the process of getting acquired by a larger company? How did you end up in that situation?
I don't know. I think a lot of people who only know that the story of this little software business in Australia getting acquired by this large 65-year-old business. It was such a fun story once people got to hear it, because nobody would expect it. We met last year by coincidence at CeMAT in August, and that was August, I think end of July. And the group CEO and part owner of Ferrag was there at this exhibition, and I was there as a visitor walking through, because my customers like Maya walked in, and I was like, I'll just do some networking, because I didn't want to afford a stand. B, I know enough people to just walk around and network. So I walked in as a guest, and I always recommend people to go to something like CeMAT, because it's awesome to see the new technology. And I walked through, and then I was standing in front of Ferrag's stand, which was because they showed the pouch sorter Skyfall. And they're iconic in Australia as one of our customers, and they walked in. I was like, guys, this is actually something that I believe benefits your operation. And I did the same with Maya, who walked in 5 minutes later, completely unshackled. And the group CEO was standing there and saw me interacting with my customers. And we're usually on pretty good terms with our customers. So there was a hug, and there was very friendly talking. And I told them both, with no interest in making money out of this, but I think a pouch sorter solution might be actually really, really beneficial for your operation. And I turned, it was like, that this is a pouch sorter. I'm not saying buy this one, but that's an example. And it's actually a pretty decent hardware. So that would be something you should investigate in. And the group CEO, Tommaso, he came to me and he said, we were set up to have coffee. That's why I came to their stand. And he said to me, did you just sell Skyfall? I was like, no. I'm just talking to my clients, and I think genuinely that this is a good solution for them. And that's so we started talking about, what do I do? What does my software do? Where we are with the business. And we had a bit of a chat, and then I did my rounds in CeMAT. I didn't think any further and went home. 5 p.m., walked out of there, went home. And the next day I was in client meetings until 4 p.m. And I got a phone call, and it was Tommaso, and he said, do you have time to come to Opera Bar? I'm here and I'm flying out tonight, but it would be nice to talk. I was like, you're so lucky that I finished my customer meetings. I have time. I'll drop in, and I live close by. So I walked over, and I came to Opera Bar, and we literally had maybe 2 hours. And I said, look, what would you say if we team up? And I'm like, well, hey, hold on. What does it mean teaming up and all of that? And we had the talk, without going into too many details that might be confidential. We had some talks about how could this work, and then we decided, parting ways, and we decided, let's investigate what this could look like if a merger or acquisition or whatever. But if there's any red flag on either side, tell the other person, and we abort mission. This will only go through, this will only be okay if both of us are 100% convinced that this is the right thing to do. And I remember sending presentations that said all my quirks as a person, and what I expect from work, to what do I need as a framework to make me happy as a manager, let alone money, but what do I need for the environment, for an office requirement, blah, blah, blah. And those were non-negotiables. And I was like, I'm not going to do this if I need to wear a suit, for example. So I said, I need to feel comfortable in my clothes. I need to feel relaxed so I can be at my best. And I'm not at my best if I have to wear a suit and a tie. So we take that out. That's not going to happen nowhere. And we had a lot of those things, and then a lot of value discussions on what are your values and what do you believe in and what do I believe in. And it was the perfect match. It was so good. It was every single point we talked about was I can really relate to this, and I can live this value, or this is matched so closely to my core values that this will work perfectly fine. And then we took August, 4 weeks to do those talks and assessments. And then by end of August, we decided, let's sign paperwork. And then by the 1st of September, we took over Ferrag Australia. So we merged the businesses on the 31st of August last year. And then on the 1st of September, we also merged the leadership of the businesses into one business. And then by December, I think we had all the legalities sorted out as well. But it was very, very quick. And it only was quick because there was very open understanding of what we need to do and how we are and how we work and how our values are and what we cherish, what we don't like. And that was really important. I think otherwise it would have never. I had no idea that if you would have asked me the week before that event, if I would merge my business into something bigger, I would have said, nah, no way. I like being an SMB. It's fun, You don't report to anybody really. You're the owner. You're the decision maker. It's your money. It gives you a lot of freedom. And then it was really this massive chance and turnaround. And I walked in with, I either do it and it becomes something global, some really good global product, or I walk away and I will become a big fish in Australia, which is fine as well. And then maybe after 10 years, somebody comes in and does a better job than us and we disappear, which is the natural progression of business as well. It's fine. So, no, it's realistic. I mean, if you don't grow, Australia is such a small market. If you don't grow outside of Australia, you're doomed. At some point, you're doomed to go into irrelevance. You might survive from it, but it's not fulfilling. So, but and if that's 10-year journey, that's 10 great years. There's nothing bad with that. So I'm also not too emotional about the product itself.
Right.
It's a great product. It just needs, now other people are finding my bugs in the code, which is great. And I always tell them, if you find a bug that has my name on it, just fix it. It's fine. Don't tell me about it anymore.
I see. Yeah, I was going to ask you like how you felt emotionally with giving away like your few years of work, but it sounds like you make sure like you're perfectly happy with all of the conditions before giving it away.
Yeah, I think you have to be, right? You can't be holding on. So if you create something and then you share it with other people to participate in this, you can't be holding it in your hand anymore. Then it's a shared product. If you can't manage that, then don't do it, because it will inevitably cause an issue. So I don't hold on to it at all whatsoever. I'm happy not to be coding. I'm happy to be feeding information on what should we do next, or what would be a great idea for a new feature. But I don't care about the details on how it's created. It's not my job. So, but that's a journey, and again, for people to assess as well if that's something you can do, if you're happy with that. Because if there's nothing wrong with being the one who does everything and does it all the time, then you build your own thing and you go for it, and that's great. But if you want to grow and become bigger, then you need to hand over your baby and let other people morph it into something better. And that's absolutely fine as well.
And I want to get into like more of the product now. So you mentioned like the value here is that it's now a unified software of what was previously like two different things, that like one manages the manual work and the other one manages like the automation. But like to get into more detail, like what are like the use cases of it? I guess like one simple example is, I guess like data collection is like a lot easier, I assume. Like you probably can like merge data from different sources better or something like that.
I think that's absolutely right. I think this is down the track, right? Start with the use cases that are immediate. So start with, if you run a warehouse and you need to inbound a container coming from Southeast Asia, you need to know the composition of that container. So before the container arrives, you in some system need to book the dock of the warehouse against this container with a certain time slot. You need people, you need equipment, and the amount of labor you need is defined by the product characteristics. A lot of times products need to be taught in, so you need to maybe do measurements, or you need to say this product is a dangerous good or whatever. So there's work and a lot of products might go from inbound straight to outbound. If it's a store replenishment, the product doesn't touch the warehouse much. So the composition of the container, the planning of labor, the planning of equipment, but also the assessment of stock, the assessment of demand coming from a sales platform against stock coming in containers. All of this, if the more layers you put in, the more complicated it will become. And our advantage is really that the warehouse supervisors, the managers have one access portal into our software suite and can do everything in one suite. So that's not even touching a product yet. That's only the setup of how do I process how do my processes work in a warehouse. And the more you have in one software, the easier it becomes for people to understand how to manage it. Because if I now receive it and I receive half of it to a pallet storage and half of it into automation, I need to know what to do. So if I don't have it in one system, I need maybe the manual part is in a manual system and then the automation part is in whatever WCS from a supplier. All of a sudden, I now need to look at two different systems. I might have two different usernames for what could happen. And those systems will tell me maybe a completely different truth of what they think is the right thing to do. So if I'm standing there in front of those two screens and they tell me conflicting information, what am I doing? I will pick and choose a system to trust. Am I choosing the system that has the least amount of work for me? Am I choosing the system that has the best benefit for the operation? Do I even know the best benefit? So I end up in guessing and not making an educated decision. No, I can't have an educated decision at this point. So for us, it was really important to support that, to say, go into one system, it will tell you exactly what you should be doing, and therefore you don't have to second guess the decisions that you're making. And then you drill down into every single, if you follow the flow of a product in the warehouse, every single touch point has those issues if you don't unify it. And then at the very end, you're collecting all the data, which is great. And that's what we are currently building up more and more with data science to say, what do we do with the data that we gather? Because there is a lot of different data that you acquire. It's automation data, so data from sensors and data from robotics, and that you can use for, let's say, predictive maintenance to say, I have a pattern recognition and I know that this sensor is going to fail in the next couple of days, so let's change it right now, to avoid downtime, down to predicted movement information of products. Mm-hmm. So you can forecast if a product should be in very close to people so that it's consumed faster for outbound orders, which means it's for very fast moving products. If they're processed a lot through the warehouse, that's what you want to do. In the fast consumer goods warehouses, this is really hard to do without machine learning, because think of a fashion warehouse. I mean, you have up to 12 seasons a year, if not more. And a product comes in, it will peak for a couple of days. It depends on social media. But not only the product, but a certain size and a certain color will peak. So not the product itself, only a very subset of it. So that you need to look at, and you need to start predicting this, because this is where a lot of money is lost. If you need to walk further back in an aisle to retrieve a product that is used a lot in customer orders, then the product is in the wrong location. Then the product needs to be very close to where people are standing anyway. So there's a lot of this in data science. There's a lot of this in machine learning to look at it differently now. And we are in a prime position to provide these services, because we gather, as a unified system, we gather all the information in our own system. So we have the data and we have the choice to how we persist this information in our data lake. So we're not relying on somebody else, because then again, you might miss critical information. We can add it really in a way to start really getting these added benefits out of the system.
Right. When you mention machine learning, do you mean more of like heuristic-based algorithms, or do you mean more like a modern deep learning sort of approach?
Depends on what you are. Depends on the use case, right? So if you go in the use case of sensor information, you might go in the direction of deep learning because there's such an amount of information, and that's when you go into deep learning. But if it goes down to products, you might go down the way of pattern recognition more than anything else. So that's why I'm pretty upset when people say AI is the solution for everything. Because first of all, tell me which AI you're talking about, and then give me a use case. A lot of times it's just marketing BS. So we are very careful when we say we utilize machine learning for something because it's a very specific application.
Yes.
And you can't use it you can't use AI as a solution for everything. So it's very specific. And I think people don't understand how specific it needs to be to give you a really good benefit. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time.
And I guess for like both pattern matching algorithm and also like deep learning, you have to have this like period of data collection. I imagine there is like a period where you don't really have any data to make like a good model. And is there like a strategy that people usually employ to like start moving into like a machine learning approach?
Depends really on, again, for product movements, you could put in, there's always an assumption made in the beginning of every warehouse operation before you started. There's an assumption made on, because otherwise you never build the warehouse, right? So you take an assumption and you say, this is my previous warehouse or my current operation. That's an extract of all the information. Plus that is my growth rate of the particular product categories and order types and all sorts of stuff. And that will end up in a data set of this will represent my new warehouse this year, next year, in 10 years. And you can use that as a starting point, for example. So because warehouses are expensive, right? So if you invest 100, 200, 300 million dollars, you want to use a lot of data to really build a really good baseline of that's what we're trying to achieve. Therefore, we can use that as an entry point data set. And then the more data you gather, the less way of importance you give to that entry data set. But it's really interesting because we have customers who tell us the system starts behaving a bit different after about 3-4 months. It's like, yes, it does, because it generated its own data. Yeah. So now it starts specifically learning what you're doing. Before that, it was the assumption that we did when we designed the whole system. Now it is reality, and now it's the fine details of your reality now affect how the system behaves, which is quite interesting.
Okay, and I want to dig in more into like the AI side of things. Like in the past decade, we have been getting this AI boom because I guess hardware get faster, we get like more specialized hardware, we get like TPUs now, right? And then we have more data. Some of them are like publicly available, like ImageNet. And then we have like more and more architecture being researched. Do you think like in the next like 10, 20 years, the use case of AI in warehousing is going to be pretty much the same, and it's just getting like better, faster, more accurate? Or are there like a fundamental change there in like how we're using the AI?
Is this mutually exclusive? I think how we use AI, if you look at 10 years, it has to fundamentally change, right? Mm-hmm. It already fundamentally changed in the last 10 years. And technology always progresses exponentially. So my assumption is that how we perceive AI and how we use AI is going to be completely different today than in 10 years' time. And if I look at a warehouse, it's the same story. We are in the warehouse. We forget about airports. Airports are decades behind because of security issues, and they need to be the technology needs to be very proven to go into an airport. But in warehouses, even here, it's an operation that if anything happens to it and it doesn't work, costs millions an hour to because if I don't send orders out today to my stores, the stores are empty, nobody's buying stuff, I've lost money. This is unrecoverable. So there's a lot of decision makers are very risk averse. So in a warehouse, to use AI, we're in its infancy, really, where yes, everybody is now playing, or most of them are now playing with machine learning, and everybody's now starting to build a data lake and collecting information so they can assess it and then build a value proposition. But it's in its infancy. We literally just now, I think we're the first ones to play with a sort of a ChatGPT way of, instead of us creating reports that are not 100% matched for the operation, because everybody's different, we want to have a feedback model where you can talk to the software and say, or type whatever you want to do and say, I want this report with this information in it, and then you do a feedback loop like you do with ChatGPT until the report is what you want. And then you export it, or then you smack it on a dashboard. So those ideas are just now shaping and dropping into our domain, which is really, really exciting. So anything to do with data science, anything to do with how this then affects the traditional functions in a warehouse is definitely coming.
Yeah. I guess like intuitively, I would guess that there is like a big fundamental change. For example, like how you mentioned, using like large language model to build reports more easily. But I find it like hard to imagine like exactly what it will look like. Like the only thing I can imagine is like, oh, the robot can move faster and like it hits stuff less frequently and it's more accurate and everything.
It's not faster, but the robot might need to move less.
Right?
Thinking that way. So I want the robots to move as slow as possible, the least amount, fulfilling the same amount of tasks that they did before when they moved more, because then I saved energy and cost and wear and tear. So there's a lot of ideas around that where you say, how can I improve this, and with this very complex decision making that we have, warehouses and their demands change on an hourly basis really right now, because of products changing so fast and the sales cycle of a product changing so fast. So you can't really use the traditional ideas of this product is always going to be here first and then there and then there, and that's how I progress it for the warehouse, because that's what we have done the last 100 years. It's not going to work anymore because consumers have inevitably changed, and COVID has just exponentially accelerated the change in behavior of people and how they order and how they expect products to be brought to them and delivered to them. And that is in the root of all for us is always the customer order, right? And what the customer buys, and ideally in a store or online, but that is our root issue root cause why we are here in our industry, is that people are buying stuff.
Do you think there's a lot of difference in this warehousing solution for like a warehouse that delivers directly to consumer versus like a warehouse that like bulk deliver to, let's say, retailers or something like that?
As is night and day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I always try to explain this to people. If you have a warehouse that delivers to stores, then you deliver one order will be a truckload, right? A store is not going to order one piece or two pieces of a product. They're going to order a truckload or half a truck, like huge quantities, which is a lot of times a full case. So you have the carton that comes from production, and that carton contains 30 pieces of a product. That goes to a store. The store does not get the luxury of ordering one piece. They order in carton quantities because they also, for transport reasons and everything. And you might then have 30, 40, 50 stores a day that you want to deliver to. And that's maybe 50 trucks. So that's a lot of volume you need to push out. So but your operation itself, you now can say, okay, team A collects everything for store 1, because you need a couple of people to do that. And you don't have much overlap between the teams, and you can structure this really nice. This is very easy to do. The problem is now with online, instead of instead of 30 stores or 50 stores, you have 10,000 customers who order 1.2 pieces on average. So that's usually 1.2 to 1.7 is globally is like the average on pieces per order. And this is crazy because I cannot send a person to collect 2 pieces, pack them, put a label on it, and put it in a cage for whatever carrier you're using, right? The carriers want you to separate it by state and sometimes priority and standard service. So you have a lot of cages lying around. If you do this in strict order picking, you end up needing 1,000 and thousands of people, because what you're doing is not volume anymore. You're not collecting volume. You're collecting tiny pieces, and then you already need to process to packing, and packing costs time. So in online, what you need to do is you need to be really smart in grouping your orders. So you are walking through the warehouse and you're collecting maybe 50 orders that need the same the most product similarity. So you're trying to collect the same product for all orders possible. And then you have this whole big bulk of products. You either have it already separated if you have a trolley with you, or you separate it out at a packing bench. And then you pack all orders, or somebody else packs all those orders, right? So it's completely different. You might, those 2 warehouses might push out the same quantity in volume, cubic volume a day. But the store replan warehouse takes a lot less people and a lot less complex processing than the online warehouse. Also, if the stores are yours and you short ship the stores, who is it going to complain to? You know, if you don't have the crap in your warehouse, you tell the store, well, you're not going to get that carton today because I don't have it in the warehouse. You ever tried that with an online customer after they paid, to tell them, hey, by the way, your product is not here today. You're going to get it in 2 months' time when it's back in stock in the warehouse. No, they need a credit note, they need an apology email, all that stuff. And it's completely different. And that is the operational part of it. And the emotional part of it is the store is dependent on me. That's it, right? And the store needs me to put stuff in the store and to sell it. The customer owns the product. The store doesn't. The store gets delivered from me and there's an invoice at some point. The customer has prepaid. So if you order something online, your expectation is when you pay, it's your product. It belongs to you. You gave me your money. Now, it's my problem that it's not already in your hand.
Yeah.
And that's the customer, because it's yours. Mm-hmm. Why is it still with me? So I need to make sure it's with you. But if you're at the store and you order a truckload of stuff that you haven't paid yet, and I tell you, well, you're not going to get it. You're like, well, I tried, You haven't invested financially in it yet as a store. And the customer would not go to a store and say, I want to buy an iPhone. And they tell you, well, we're out of stock. You don't tell them, oh, well, I upfront paid for it.
Yeah. That makes
right?
sense.
You walk to the store and if it's not there, it's not there. It's annoying, but that's the difference to online. Online is prepaid. A promise has been made.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge
So
nightmare
it's in
online.
It's yeah, it's not a nightmare. It's a challenge. But I really love the online challenge because the store replan is mostly a bit boring, but online is where a lot of smarts needs to come in. And because you have this emotional bond, right, between the customer and the product that they own. They've decided to spend money and now it's not in their hand. I did a keynote about that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where I said, why is it not with me? I've ordered and I've paid and you owe me the product. So my customer setup is negative to start with because I have this brief hype of happiness when I pay, and then an hour later I'm like, oh no, I want the product.
Yeah,
it should be here. I paid for it. So that setup, I think people need to, in our industry, people need to start learning that promise is the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing. You got the money on your bank account from that customer and you have the product in your hands. So that's your issue, nothing else. And the faster you can solve this, the happier the customer is gonna be. Let alone from not sending it at all, which is not acceptable. But also, is the packaging material nice? The store doesn't care. But if you order a Louis Vuitton handbag, I mean, I don't think you would. Well, you can order it online, I guess. You want this to become in a premium packaging, right? In filling material that smells nice and all sorts of stuff. Whereby if you order from H&M, you don't really care, or from Temu, you don't care, right? So it's also expectation setting on the product, and a lot of warehouses like Meyer's warehouse, they sell high-end goods as well as standard products. So on the way out the warehouse, we need to make sure in our software that, hold on, this is a high-value item. We need to process this differently. It can't be in a smudged box. It needs to be pristine. There might be regulations from the brand that the sticker can only go on a certain variant, So there's a lot of those things to consider with online, which is quite fun.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question on that. I feel like another challenge that people might face is on deciding who's to blame. Say you're packaging something, and then your warehouse thinks, it's a good packaging, everything's inside is perfect, and then you give it to the delivery guy, whoever decided to deliver that, and it ends up in customer as a broken product. Like, how do you decide there, like which in that chain of delivery the things gets broken? Or something like that?
Do you care as a customer?
I guess the customer doesn't. Just want to.
Yeah, exactly. Why should I care then? As the one who got the money, it's my problem to start with. Of course, you assess. It's the same thing with suppliers as with carriers, right? Products coming in and out the warehouse, I always have an audit requirement where I say how much damage happened after, either before I received the product or after I handed it over, and then I track this in a quality KPI against the supplier and against the carrier, and that if somebody's too bad, then I kick them out and I go for an alternative. That is always done. But for the online customer itself, me as the selling business is the owner of the problem, and there's no other discussion to be had. Internally, of course, you do all those quality assessments. We know systems where high values are photographed on the way out, for example. But also that's where carriers have contracts that state that if there's anything broken, and it's proven to be the carrier, then they are liable.
I see.
I think it's Iconic, for example, has unique identifiers on every single product. They put a unique identifier, similar to what Uniqlo does with their RFID tags. And that's really interesting, because not only do we know which product that you received as a customer, but we also know exactly the piece. And I don't mean that particular jumper. I mean that jumper arrived on that day, was moved into X many locations, touched by those people, handed by this particular carrier in this particular cage, collected on this particular day. So that's the level of traceability that is slowly getting into our industry. To say and that's the blockchain model, right? Where you say you attach data as you go.
Right. I want to get back into like automation side of things again, and we're progressing in terms of automation in the last couple of decades, and I'm sure like warehousing industry is like one of those industries that like slowly replace human labor with automation. And I guess, do you have any opinion or like prediction on like what will be like the first to like the last things that get replaced? What is like the easiest to like the hardest one to replace?
Oh, 20 years ago, a lot of stuff was already automated in warehouses. The bare minimum nowadays is conveyors, where I'm taking the walking away from people. So whatever I can do to get the person, because what you are in a warehouse is this: you are a hand, because the human hand can grip better than a robot hand. So the human in a warehouse is a gripper. That's all you are. So if we can automate everything around you to eliminate your walking, to eliminate your thinking process, really, anything else, if you can be stationary and just grip stuff and go put it from A to B, then that's the best use of a human right now in a warehouse for basic functionalities, right? So now you can think of the initial automation was conveyors and systems that support that. And the progression so far until today is that instead of conveyors, you might want to use robots because they are not statically built, so they don't take up space. They will drive around, and we are now going into the direction of robots being safe enough that they can be in the same area without humans, without fencing in the middle. For a very long time, there was a fence, depending on the state laws and country laws, but a lot of times you still need a fence, even though it's not required anymore. But legislation is always behind. The future will be the use of currently in a lot of houses, you can see that automation always happens on the ground floor, or is built from the ground floor up. Automation needs to happen also from the ceiling down, because a lot of empty space in a warehouse is where your maximum height of storage, pallets, whatever you have, that is lower than your ceiling, and that's a lot of real estate that is not used. There's a lot of very cool automation to come, in my opinion, in the sense of utilizing space that is currently wasted. And that is a game changer, because current warehouse operators, hopefully everybody outgrows the warehouse, right? It means their business is growing. But that also means that instead of outgrowing your warehouse, you just need to think differently. You need to add new automation. You need to add new robotics. You need to add smarter systems to utilize the currently empty space. And then all of a sudden, for the same real estate, you produce a lot more, which means your cost per square meter, your cost per square foot comes down. And that is only inside the warehouse. Then you can talk about drones. I think drones will play a really big role in transportation, intra warehouse, so in a warehouse, but also outside, obviously. We see trends of augmented reality, and people hate it in a warehouse. If you try to wear augmented reality for an 8-hour shift while you do physical work, not fun. So I think that there's still a lot of potential in it. I truly believe in augmented reality to be amazing, but it just needs to be a lot less clunky in the hardware. It needs to be so easy to wear that I forget I'm wearing it.
Yeah.
Then it works.
Yeah, I think I tried wearing it for half an hour, and I get huge motion sickness from it. Yeah, can't imagine
exactly.
8-hour shift.
Can you imagine 8 hours? Yeah, exactly. But the benefit of it is amazing, right? I mean, if you have 50 different small locations of small products in front of you, we could overlay green where you really need to go to, so you could be much faster. But also with stuff, a robot coming to you, we could overlay the robot as red and sort of don't go in this direction. Safety, you can do a lot in where should you walk. We can put a path on the floor for you. Or everything that can be done already. From a software perspective, everything is possible. We just need to wait for hardware to make people sick, really. Mm-hmm. But yeah. There's and I have no idea what automated hardware is coming up next. I mean, I'm always amazed by what Boston Dynamics is doing. Amazing robotics. That's really fun. But those things, it's fun to see a 30 seconds video or 1 minute video. This thing needs to work 24 hours a day, 365 a year for 10 years. And a lot of those newer models, they haven't been tested to the pressure of a warehouse, where the floor is not great, where the light is very different. You have sunlight coming in, you have shade, you have a lot of dust. A lot of times a warehouse will have gates open, so you will have dust and wind blowing in, all sorts of crap, right? So if I have it in a research facility where it's very clean, that thing might never work in a warehouse yet. So it's to be seen when we can have not if, but when we can get that in a warehouse, and then that will be fun as well to have robots taking over. Slowly, we're getting forklift trucks, AMRs, so autonomous forklift trucks, which are, I think, out of necessity that we don't have enough forklift drivers in the world. We need those trucks, and they are really good now. So the latest ones coming out from especially China, they have really good products. So we can see a lot that happens. Any transporting, any walking to be eliminated. And whoever invents a robot that can mimic this better than a human will win the race, in my opinion.
What do you think is so hard about like gripping things? Is it just like the feedback loop?
It's the sensory. So you have 5 fingers.
Right.
Your hand can the movement of your hand is incredible, right? And you can pick up a very fragile small glass bottle without breaking it. And a robot will have issues with this, especially when it's with 1,000 other tiny bottles in a big tote coming along at 0.5 meter a second. But for a human, it's easy because your hand-eye coordination is just there. And you know, if I grab it, even if it's driving by, I can grab it out. And if I can't grab it, I let go. But to get a robot to do this physical sensibility, touching, and this movement is so hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are plenty of fails that are fun and out there where robots have broken products or broken themselves or suction cups gone wrong. All sorts of stuff is there. So
Yeah, I think I remember vaguely reading about like a paradox where there are things that humans do that require like cognitive ability that is easy for a robot or for like computers, like language or like making art, whatever. But there are like more basic things that we share with animals, like walking, jumping, swimming, etc. That apparently is like really hard to automate for some
it comes
reason.
really hard, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I mean, you ideally, a warehouse is not the nicest environment most of the time, right? So if you can reduce the human participation in the shift work to be standing there and using your hands to pick something, I think it's nothing bad, because if you automate your warehouse to a very high end, you need specialized people to be there and maintain the machinery,
Right.
because otherwise it's falling apart because it's a dirty environment. So what in one end, because that's my industry, right? On one end, we destroy a lot of jobs when we automate, because you might go from 300 people working in a shift to 20 and have the same result. On the other hand, you create this very specialized, highly paid, highly skilled technical need that is now there. And I think that was a discussion 2014 at the UN conference in Cambodia, where we discussed that and said, what's the worth of having masses working in a very low paid job versus a few people working in a highly paid job, specialist job, and the skills that you bring into an emerging economy, for example. And that was a really fun discussion that we had for it was a human rights conference in Cambodia.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I agree with your earlier point about how robots that appear to work perfectly fine in like research environment, when you bring it into like a completely different environment, they might like overfit to previous one, and then they just like don't know what's going on in a new environment. And yeah, it's like,
you just test it yourself, right? Buy a cheap drone, fly it in your living room, and then fly it outside. You change the environment, see what happens, right?
yeah.
So those things, yeah, and those are very easy things to test and to play with, and yeah. But it's same story in airports, right? Airport systems are belt conveyors, which is a huge waste of real estate a lot of times, right? And why not use robots? Because in warehouses, it's a warehouse, but in airports, it's a different game. Airport real estate, if I can put in one more duty-free store, I earn money as an airport. If I put in a baggage handling system, I burn money. I'm not earning money. So the space considerations for baggage handling systems are very low. And then obviously you need to have redundancy. You need to, if one line goes down, you need a backup line and stuff like that. Thinking of this, putting robotics in there is a game changer for airports, right? To say, what could you do completely different with not a system that is not connected from A to B with a static conveyor, but where you use robotics, because that will, your redundancy is totally different. Your utilization of space is different. I had this idea a few years ago again, there are many ideas that I always park to the side because it's not my main mission, but I'm like, it's a fun idea for later. One of them is, why not utilize a hanging system where the bag at check-in is clicked into some hanger, goes underneath the ceiling of an airport, because there's also a lot of wasted space there. And then because nobody can touch it. If it's that high up, nobody can get to the bag, so it's secure. And then I go through bag security screening and all this stuff, but I can sort it in the ceiling of airports. It's not a problem. And utilize that space. And actually, people would love to see their bags running around.
Yeah, and if someone tries to touch it, like everyone's looking at it, right? So it's probably like more secure.
And if you put this 6-7 meters up height, nobody's going to touch it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So in most airports, you have pretty high ceilings, so it shouldn't be an issue to have it running up there instead of having it running either underneath the floor or between walls. A lot of times, you have that. So there's a lot of automation and a lot of innovation that needs to happen still for warehousing and also for airports. That is going to be super interesting for the next 10 years, for more than that. But
right. I have sort of like this instinct. I don't know if this is correct or not, but there's like a trade-off between like a conveyor belt versus a robot, where a robot is it has like low throughput, so it can like deliver things less quickly, like less volume, but it's like a lot more flexible. You can pick different things and like make it do different things. Is that like a right way to think about it?
Yeah, you're pretty spot on. So even if you say you have a cheap, let's do a basic robot, a robot that can emulate a conveyor, so you can convey something on the robot, right? Let's say a 600 times 400 footprint carton or tote. The conveyor gives you much higher throughput and much more capacity than the robot system could ever have, because at some point there will be too many robots in the grid and they stand in each other's way and throughput goes down. But there are different considerations. The conveyor locks you. So you now need to build either bridges for people to walk over the conveyor, or you need to open gates where the conveyor opens up for forklift trucks to drive through. If there's an emergency exit way, you actually need to have a spiral conveyor to go up above the pathway of the emergency vent and go back down. And this is all a lot of cost. Whereby a robot doesn't have those issues, because it's only traveling a path when it needs to, and then the path is free most of the time. So they're not exclusive to each other, right? So you can have both. There are warehouse systems out there. There's one in Brisbane where you utilize conveyors for the backbone, for fast moving, for the essential transports that are always going to happen, and you can use robots for the smaller areas of the warehouse that have less demand on transportation. So if you think of, you have multiple levels, for example, and people are working in those levels. Traditionally, you would have a conveyor going up and down the levels, and then up and down the aisles of the levels to deliver work to people in different zones. What you actually really need is, you need the conveyor to go up and down the levels because there's a lot of traffic. But on the level itself, you can actually utilize an AMR. You can utilize a robot, because there's a lot less traffic to that particular person to work. So if I have a couple of thousand transports an hour on the conveyor, I might only have like 10 or 15 an hour for one particular zone. So that's when it makes a lot of sense to combine it, to have handover points to a different technology that plays into the benefit of, or into the requirement of, that particular area of the warehouse. So I really like combining stuff, and that's one of the big items that we took. I think 2015 we started concepts for that, or even earlier.
I guess getting into like a more general topic of just like how you lead companies and so on. Do you think there are like differences, like huge difference? And what do you think is harder and more fulfilling when you lead like a smaller company versus when you now lead like Ferrag, a bigger company?
Oh, that's a personal flavor, I think. Mm-hmm. So if you lead a small business, there's a lot more anxiety. Obviously, you decide, and there's no second guessing really. You decide, you fulfill your vision, but also you are responsible. There's nobody in the back that would say, oh, that was a wrong decision, but don't worry, we got you. You make a mistake, you pay for it. And sometimes if you have to pay for it, the business is gone. So the stakes are incredibly high in a startup or in a small business. And also for you as a person, right? It's usually your money in there. Whereby for a big business, you can shape the future of a big business. Personally, it's less risky for you as a person. Also, you have the backing of ownerships, of investors, of shareholders, whatever the structure is, and you can work on a different level. So your decisions are not only your decisions. Now they are group decisions. They need to be accepted by people and stuff like that. So obviously, decision making is much slower, but your risk is less. I will never be at a point where I walk home and I won't think about work. I will always have it in my head, and I was thinking, oh, what could I do different? What can I do? Because I love doing it. I'm in the industry that I love since I'm a teenager. But in a large corporate, you could go home and say, that's my job, and now I leave that behind, and now I'm private. And that's impossible in a small business, in my opinion. That's a small business eats your life. And there's nothing bad with that. It's something really fun. But it's going to be 24/7, whereby in a large business, it's not. In a large business, you have, at some point, you go home and it's not your business really. So you can switch off.
Right.
Maybe have a week of leave this year.
Okay. And another question I want to ask is a bit more philosophical. So like in the world of AI, there's this concept called like objective function, right? Which is basically how you define what your AI should strive for, what it should try to maximize. And for example, in the case of like classification model, your objective function would be to maximize the accuracy on whether it's a person or not a person, or whatever you're trying to guess. And if you are about to map that into like a company building, what do you think, in your opinion, the objective function of a company should be? What should a company strive for? What it should maximize for?
I'm the wrong person, I think, because I would say most companies' answer, if they're truthful, is make money, right? For me, that's not it. For me, that's number 3. Number 1 is solve the problem that you came here to solve. That should be, and that needs to be the company's highest goal. Solve the problem that was your mission, that you came out, slay the dragon that you came here to slay. Don't get sidetracked by the shiny gold on the side. That's going to happen anyway. And that is a core value item of whoever is running, whoever is the decision maker. If you join a business and you're only here to make shareholders happy, then you're going to make money. And you don't care too much if you're solving problems or not. But if you believe in what you do and if you believe in your products, then you're here to solve a problem, and you're here to solve the problem that you set out to do. And that's what I do. For me, there's never, money needs to be working. We need to make profit, obviously. But there's a different way to do this, and the way to do this is by not losing focus on the problem that you try to solve. And then that also means blocking out all the white noise that is out there. I think that's way easier in a large corporate than as a startup, to be honest. In a startup, it happened to me, but I had to learn to turn off the white noise, because you sit there and you might have sold your product once or twice, and you're in this phase of it doesn't really make money, but then somebody asks you, oh, could you do this or could you do that? And it's not your core product, but you might bastardize it, and it might work maybe and make some. No, don't. It's not your problem that you're trying to solve. And if you don't say no to those things, then you end up with something that does a lot of things, but none of it great. So don't lose focus of what you came here to do, and ignore everything on the side.
Right. So I have one last question before we end the podcast. Um, I not asking this to Karl as a founder or as a CEO, but just you as a person. Do you have a child by any chance?
No.
No. Okay. So imagine a hypothetical scenario where you have a child and you can tell your child like one last life lesson. What do you think that would be?
Don't take life too serious. Have fun. Have fun. If you don't have fun, you're gonna be miserable, and there's no time to be miserable.
Mm.
Whatever comes your way, there will be good stuff, there will be bad stuff. Don't take any of it too serious. First of all, we're all playing with an idea, right? Money is an idea. We all agreed that in our head that this little number means something, or this green paper means something. It means nothing. It's a concept. It's the same as countries. Countries are a concept in people's heads. It's not like it's not like the planet has decided, right? So don't take life too serious. Have fun with what you do. I think that's the most important thing in life. And if you can achieve that, then you won't be stressed and you won't be unhappy for long. You'll be unhappy sometimes, but that's normal. But yeah,
And I
I
guess
think everything else falls behind that. So
right. And in your case, that philosophy sort of helps you gain success, even if you don't like try to achieve it.
also, well, yeah, but it also helps me to center myself back, right? If you have one of those really bad days, or you have one of those days where stuff just doesn't go right, just take a step back and it's like, okay, I'm taking this too serious. Is there anything I can do to help this right now? No. Can't take it too serious. I'm sorry. If there's anything I can do, I'll do it. I'm still not going to take it so serious that it impacts me as a person. Because why? There's no benefit for anybody to take it extremely serious. So that's really always helping me to center myself, to say, okay, I'm here. That's what I want to do. I will have fun on the way, and all the positivity, the extremes on either side, right? Don't take them too serious.
All right.
It's not going to change your path anyway, dramatically.
Guess that's the end of the podcast. Well, it was such a pleasure talking to you.
Oh wow, it was fun talking to you too.
Yeah. I have this calendar journey thing where I can see like monthly view on like highlights of each month. I think like this will be one of the thing I highlights this month. But yeah, it was very fun. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will share you the link of the podcast once it's aired. So yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks.
Great.
Right.
Thank you. See ya.